Welcome to the Airgun Show. This week we've got the 100 foot-pound Daystate Wolverine 3038 on the range. But before that, I'm out for an evening's rabbit shooting. We're out shooting rabbits on the farm this evening, and it's actually one of my favourite permissions. It's not a particularly big acreage, but it can be quite productive, and it lends itself brilliantly to hunting with air guns. There are houses nearby, livestock in the fields, and also one or two footpaths I need to be aware of. But by using a silenced air gun and taking my shots carefully, I can control pests here without causing disturbance to livestock or the neighbours. So let's get on with it. It's a mild evening and the conditions look promising for a few hours out after rabbits. So I move on quietly, staying close to the hedgerow and keeping my footfalls as soft as possible. I'm planning to shoot on the move this evening, mooching around, but I have got the bipod fitted, and that's for several reasons. Firstly, if I come across an area that seems to have quite a few rabbits around, I may well set up an ambush, and then it'll be handy to have the stability of the bipod. But also, it's quite a breezy evening, and by getting down low, even when I'm stalking, if I can get within range, get down and take shots from lying down prone, it means they'll be that much lower beneath the wind and hopefully less affected by any breeze that there is. Also, I've got the scope cam fitted, try and capture some footage through that, and it's a heck of a lot easier shooting through the scope cam if I'm shooting from the stability of a bipod rather than trying to shoot freehand or kneeling. Shade is a much neglected form of concealment that can help to keep you hidden from your quarry, especially in bright conditions. Every tiny advantage makes a difference when you're hunting on the move, so I try to keep on the shady side of any cover whenever I can. Eventually I spot a couple of rabbits out feeding in the evening sun. After closing down the final few metres, it's time to settle myself down quietly into a stable shooting position. Fortunately, the rabbit that's within range isn't spooked by the sound of me pulling out the bipod legs. It's probably drowned out by the sound of the breeze, but it's still a reminder of the importance of having them set up before you get this close. Rested on the bipod and sheltered from the wind, this shot is just a formality. There was another rabbit out, but the sound of the pellet hitting home sent it running, so I pick myself up and walk in for the retrieve. Well, I was certainly glad to be able to get down and out of the worst of the wind for that shot. It wasn't a particularly big rabbit, probably only about 2/3 grown, but then when you're shooting for pest control, they all count. It's also worth remembering not to write off those smaller rabbits when you're shooting for the pot, because they're usually a lot tenderer and a lot better tasting than those bigger, tougher, overwintered rabbits. Well, that's one in the bag, but as ever, I'm eager to add more. I continue on my way, hugging the cover and doing my best to stay in the shade, and it's not long before I spot more rabbits out munching on the sweet, sun-ripened grass. It's vital not to be in too much of a hurry when you're out stalking. By moving slowly and quietly, I'm able to get close enough for the shot and soon have another rabbit in the crosshairs.
Once more the sound of the pellet connecting with bone sends the rest of the rabbits running, so I break cover and make the retrieve.
Well, that's a slightly bigger one. Wind wasn't actually a problem for that one because it's much more sheltered over on this side of the farm. The only thing I did have to contend with was the fact that the rabbit was bobbing its head about a bit as it was feeding on the grass. But I gave it a squeak, which made it sit up still. Then I managed to get a pellet right into the back of its head, lights out.
The sun's getting low, and although I don't have my lamping gear to continue shooting after dark, I'm not finished yet, and creep on around the fields in the hope of increasing the bag.
Some of you have probably noticed that I usually wear welly boots when I'm out hunting. They keep your feet dry, they keep ticks off your legs, and provided you invest in a fairly decent pair, they're usually not too clumpy for walking around in. However, even I have to concede that when you're out stalking wary rabbits, you need that bit more stealth. So tonight I'm wearing something just a little bit more quieter and a little bit lighter. The grass is short, it's a dry evening, so I don't need to worry about keeping my feet dry. Well, our stalk rounds produced a couple of rabbits, but I'm going to finish up with an ambush now. There's an old tree guard up on the hillside, gives me a nice high vantage point, about 30 or 40 metres from where I expect the rabbits to be emerging. It also just provides a little bit of cover to help to hide my outline, so I'm going to head up there now and set up off the bipod.
That redundant tree guard only provides a scrap of cover, but it's more than enough when shooting prone. And, even for this final stakeout, that all-important shade will make a very useful contribution to my concealment.
I've not bothered with my head net so far this evening, and I don't tend to when I'm shooting on the move. I like to be able to see all around me and see where I'm putting my feet. But from here, I've got a pretty good idea where the rabbits are going to be coming out, so I don't need that wide field of view, so I'm going to pop it on just for a bit of added concealment.
I've set up at just under 30 metres from where I expect the rabbits to emerge. With the wind dropping, it makes for a comfortable shooting distance, with a few metres leeway to the left and right if they come out further along the bank. It takes patience, but this sort of ambush usually produces results, and you're far less likely to be rumbled by the rabbits than when you're on the move. With the evening closing in, I'm hopeful that rabbits will soon be back out to feed.
Typically, there are 1 or 2 rabbits out moving now, probably, well over 100 metres down the bank, out of range for me, and I'm not going to break cover trying to stalk in because I'd probably spook them before I got there. I'm right out in the open once I leave this little bit of cover. So I'll sit tight. This is usually quite a busy area, so I'm still confident we'll get some action here.
It's a waiting game, but patience is usually rewarded when it comes to hunting with air rifles. And sure enough, a rabbit eventually creeps out from the hedgerow and within range of my hiding place, so it's back on with the scope cam. Filming through the scope can make for tricky shooting, but the bipod certainly makes it easier to get on aim and stay on aim.
Well, that one almost sprung right out of the sight picture. It's quite a common reaction with headshot rabbits. The reflex is that it sort of springs their legs down, which catapults them forwards. But I've checked now, check through the scope cam. It's a good clean kill, so I'm going to stay put.
The moon is high and there's still a glow from the sun, so the light is hanging on better than I'd expected. I'm determined to make the most of it and try to stick it out for another shot, but eventually have to settle for 3.
It's been quite a while since that last rabbit. Nothing else has come out. We've given it a fair chance, and also I'm getting pretty uncomfortable sprawled out on this incline, so I'm going to go and pick that one up and call it a night. Well, 3 rabbits isn't a huge haul, but it's a decent little bag for the pot, and it's been an enjoyable evening. It's just a nice place to spend time. And I know there are plenty more rabbits to be had here, so I'm looking forwards to the next time. An enjoyable summer's evening out after rabbits there. And now it's over to the Airgun Show news.
This is the Airgun Show news, brought to you by the Airgun Centre. Air rifles, air pistols and rimfire rifles were stolen in a break-in at Leicester and District Small Bore Rifle and Pistol Club last week. Burglars broke through a thick wall to access the premises on Newton Linford Lane in Groby between 4:30 and 5:30 a.m. on the 6th of August. More than 30 guns were stolen, including several air arms guns whose serial numbers are on screen now. Leicestershire Police believe the thieves may have used a vehicle parked near the entrance to the club. Anyone who noticed anything suspicious in the area around the time of the burglary, or who may have information relating to the stolen guns, should contact Leicester Police on 101. There were new developments on display at the CLA Game Fair at Harewood House, courtesy of Daystate and Brocock. On the airgun range, Daystate's Tony Beelis was keen to show us the new synthetic stock Daystate Pulsar, and there was more news on the Brocock Compatto too.
One of the great things about synthetic versions, we've been able to drop the price. The price drops from $19.95 to just £1 short of £1,600. So it does bring the price a little bit better into affordability. It retains the laser and it retains all the electronics, and everything else is the same on the rifle, just a synthetic stock. Replacing the Mark IV, which we discontinued late last year, and the Pulsar now in its laminate version and in the synthetic version are fully running through right now till the end of time. This is a prototype version of the Brocock Compatto. We launched this at the IWA earlier in the year, and we've been refining and developing it ever since. Its in-shop date is late September, early October, and we have on this one really a sort of production version of the stock. We've added a Picatinny rail on the front end, and a higher cheek piece, and a slightly longer stock than on the original design. 10-shot magazine, very unique magazine system. It looks like a Daystate system, it's a slightly different indexing system which is on the front, and all metal construction magazine.
And there's a new shooting event taking place just a few miles from Harewood House next year. The Northern Shooting Show is set to make its debut at the Yorkshire Event Centre in Harrogate on the 7th and the 8th of May. It'll be an indoor show supplemented by a wide range of outdoor activities and demonstrations, and will cover all varieties of shooting. Head to the address on screen now to find out more. And finally, Tim Bonner is the Countryside Alliance's new chief executive. He's worked at the Alliance for years as its director of campaigns and will step up to the top spot in September when Barney White-Spunner stands down as executive chairman. Tim said the appointment was a huge honour and also a huge responsibility, and that the Alliance would change to face new challenges under his leadership. That was the Airgun Show news.
It's taken us a while to get round to reviewing a high-powered airgun, but I think this week's test gun should just about make up for that. It's the Daystate Wolverine 303. Retailing for £1,458, this airgun spits out massive 50 grain .303 calibre pellets at 100 foot-pounds. No doubt most of you are wondering what that power translates to in terms of downrange accuracy and knockdown power, but I'll just run through the Wolverine's main features before we take to the range. The first thing to strike me about the 303 is that it looks quite a handful. It measures up at 112 centimetres and weighs 4.2 kilos unscoped, yet it still feels brilliant in the shoulder. The fact is that this airgun is incredibly well balanced, and much of that can be attributed to its beautiful ambidextrous walnut stock. The long forend gives plenty of options when it comes to gun hold, my only quibble with it being that the stippling could do with being a little further forward. There's the same stippling on the pistol grip, and it does an excellent job of improving your purchase on the gun. The contour of the pistol grip makes for perfect trigger attack, and I particularly like the fact that it's sculpted for a thumb-up hold. The high cheek piece gives brilliant eye scope alignment, and the butt plate can also be adjusted up and down to tweak gun fit. The 303 stock looks great, but it also functions brilliantly, and there's none of the compromise that I'd sometimes expect from an ambidextrous handle. Typical of Daystate, engineering and finish are excellent, from the solid one-piece breech block to the anti-glare finish on the cylinder and barrel shroud. That barrel shroud does provide some sound suppression, but the Wolverine still has quite a muzzle crack, as you'd expect from an airgun turning out 100 foot-pounds. However, it's threaded to accept a silencer, and I'll be putting on the Hug-It moderator when we do the range tests, as it does a great job of hushing the Wolverine's back. You probably wouldn't want to use a stirrup pump to fill the 303, as a 250 bar fill gives around 10 shots, though you can expect a few more from the carbon bottled highlight version, which costs about £40 more. Filling from a diving bottle is simple though. Simply push the dust cap off the front of the cylinder, connect to the inlet, and you're ready to fill. And you can keep an eye on air reserves via the gauge on the underside of the stock. Daystate's awesome 50 grain Emperor pellets have been developed specifically for the Wolverine's .303 calibre bore. They're fed to the breech via a very slick 5-shot magazine that's cycled by the chunky reversible bolt. Pull back the bolt to turn the magazine and cock the action, which really doesn't seem to take much more effort than cocking a 12 foot-pound airgun, then push it forwards to probe home the pellet and it's ready to shoot. The 303's two-stage adjustable trigger is excellent. The sweep of the blade is just right and the let-off is crisp and predictable. It's reassuringly positive, but just like the cocking bolt, doesn't feel like it's doing much more work than if it were on a 12 foot-pound airgun. The manual safety catch is perfectly positioned at the rear of the action, and the Wolverine has an added safety feature in that it won't fire when the bolt is out. Also, the pin that indexes the magazine is reset by the pressure released from each shot, which means there's no risk of loading 2 pellets into the barrel at once. Also, it won't reset if the pressure in the cylinder is too low to push a pellet down the barrel, so you shouldn't be able to get one of those 50 grain Emperors jammed in there. That's a very quick overview of the Wolverine 303's key features. Now for the exciting part. I'm going to turn around the bench so we've got a nice high bank behind the target, and we'll see what that 100 foot-pounds of energy can do downrange. Well, that wasn't bad for a breezy day. First 2 shots were practically through the same hole, third one went a little bit high, but it was more my fault than the gun's. It has got a slight kick to it and it takes some getting used to, but I've got to say it makes it all the more enjoyable to shoot. We'll push the target out now to 100 metres and see what I can do with that. Well, there was a drop of about a foot there from the 50 metre zero, but those target circles are 4 inches across, and looking down range, that group must be about 1 3/4 inches from centre to centre, which is really impressive considering we've got a bit of a breeze going across the range today. Now the weather's threatening to spoil our fun, but I'm hoping we'll have time now to shoot something a bit more reactive just to see what sort of damage these pellets can do. Admittedly, it's hard to translate the effect of a pellet on fruit and blocks into knockdown power on live quarry, but I think that pretty much proves that this is going to make quite a mess of whatever you do hit. But the Daystate Wolverine 303 isn't just about raw power. It's actually a surprisingly refined airgun that boasts impressive accuracy. On top of that, it's also really good fun to shoot, and I can certainly see why it's such a big hit with high power airgun hunters all around the world. That's all we've got time for this week, but we'll be back again in a fortnight. Thanks for watching, and please don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. And if you aren't already a member of the BASC, have a look at their website and check out the benefits you could be taking advantage of through Airgun membership.